Happy Friday, Jack. How are you?
Yeah, yeah. Happy Friday to you too. Yeah, a little bit snowy, but it's okay.
It's a little snowy. It's whatever in January. Did you make any New Year's resolutions? Are you a resolution?
Well, yeah, well, kind of, yeah. So I made a resolution, right, that I'm gonna try to work more and be more productive, and kind of,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So you just want to tee up possible conversations with me, right? Is that my
Yeah, yeah, and maybe be more efficient in getting some rest, meaning that maybe kind of go to bed early and not browse so much papers about AI because it looks like they are all going in the same direction.
it's a probably a fair well, good luck with that, by the way. And I
Mhm.
only mention it because I love this word productivity, and I'm
Mhm.
trying my best to of course reinvent the wheel, which is
Mhm.
interesting when you read research because I will say in my own world, a world
Mhm.
that I've lived in for a while, I was very interested in art and still am. Went to art school even. Hey, go figure, right? And
Yeah.
so what I realize is that wherever, whatever subject that you're in, especially art is maybe easier than most, that you start to know artists and you refer to things by shorthand. Like that's very, it looks like a Paul Klee-esque or a Picasso-esque or a James Turrell. Anyway, these are just names that for most people, they have no idea at all what you're talking about. And when I read research, I start to realize these same shorthands seem to come into play. Like you always seem to quote, at least that I'm reading, these same researchers or something like that. And then all I
Mhm.
keep looking at is sort of the dates because I'm like, well, is this recent? Is it old? Is this sort of seminal knowledge? Am I on to anything here? Like, is this the lingua franca that AI people, they name drop?
Yeah, yeah, I think that, it would be maybe difficult to find the Picassos of research, right? It's very difficult to see, what's kind of evaluate what stands out, what has its own flavor. It looks like, the well accepted patterns of journal submission and being, accepted to the leading journals are always kind of like written in stone, pretty much. So it's hard to see, kind of something that is a breakthrough, like this seminal paper in generative AI, like attention is all you need, right? Which kind of
Mm-hmm.
gave the push for generative AI development. I don't know. I mean, I think I saw this paper very early, and I don't think I grasped the importance of it, right? But somebody did, right? And kind of ran with it. So perhaps that paper, maybe it was accepted, maybe it was rejected. I don't remember where it was published, but you
Hmm.
know, yeah. So, but maybe on the other hand, it was very technical. It was kind of an interesting discussion. Maybe it was accepted and was kind of like uh, considered very highly. But today, probably, everybody is referencing that paper, right? So now it's kind of getting more and more importance. So in that respect, it's really very difficult to evaluate research, right? I mean, the research papers, especially,
Hmm.
unless somebody grabs the idea, runs with it, and creates a product that is kind of creating to a multi-billion-dollar startup, kind of like evaluation on the market, right? So yeah, it's hard to say.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I guess it's if you were teaching English, for example, there's no particular law set in stone that everyone has to read Dickens or something, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt to have some
Mm,
sort of you should know about this person and their work. I happen to have two people, Dave Weinberger and Mickey McManus, that I ask people to watch a lecture by them in my first
mm,
class because both of them say interesting things that I like. And I got to
mm,
see one of them in person, which I really liked. As it gets older, though, it's almost 10 years or more old, these two lectures. And I start to wonder, it's like, well, is this, like you just said, is this accepted, yes, this is the wisdom of the ages, these
Mm,
two people? Or do you have to continually find new people, which leads us maybe into why I ask, is this paper that I got from somewhere, I think I got it
mm,
from Reddit, called A
mm,
Comprehensive Study on Bias in Artificial Intelligence Systems.
mm,
Maybe that's a terrible title, but I wonder like what the word comprehensive means when you do anything. But okay, fine. And I literally
mm,
read this whole thing. I didn't have it summarized for me, but it is written by Elif Kartal from the Faculty of Economics, Istanbul, Turkey. So maybe writing from a
mm,
point of view that I'd appreciate, not necessarily from a technical point of view. It seems to
mm,
be more about what
mm,
may or may not be a fun topic to get your take on.
mm,
I
mm,
think it's very topical, don't you think? This bias
mm,
thing, since now Meta has decided to not uh, police anything anymore, right? Like as
mm,
if there was some ability that people had to determine bias. And
mm,
I sort of think like, well, are people going to try and automate this as I believe they have since they're
mm,
invented the little I find this offensive button. That
mm,
seems to be kind of the trigger that uh, probably I don't know what it does since I don't write things that are terribly offensive. I don't know. I know that I just had a video pulled because in the background, I guess there was some music playing.
mm,
So so there's that. I figured that's AI 1,000%, right? Or so ML,
mm,
let's call it ML, going through videos looking for me purloining tiny bits of copyrighted material that somebody wants money for. I guess I don't know. It does
yeah.
actually seem ridiculous that they don't just ask you to pay them 0.0002 cents to let this thing
Mm.
be in your video, since I think that's all it's worth. Um, anyway, I don't know if you looked at this paper or not. What do you think of this bias in AI? Do you even care? Like whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So the bias was always kind of a little bit like inflammatory topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what it is really kind of like there is an implication that somebody is doing something that is unfair, right? There is an implication, right? Maybe it's the machine learning engineer who kind of set up things
Mm-hmm.
that the model is maybe producing results that are kind of going in a certain direction, right? Like, maybe there is maybe a data set that says that, guys like who wear glasses are less intelligent and they play poorly chess, right? They are poor at chess, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
and then there's going to be and so there is a model created, and there is a bunch of guys with glasses that lost chess matches to guys that are not wearing glasses, right? So then if your model says something like, hey, if you are wearing glasses, then chances are that maybe you are not playing chess that well comparing to other people, right? Is that a bias, right, of the person that set up the machine learning algorithm? Is that a bias in the data set that has maybe not enough observations about great chess players that wear glasses, right? Is there a bias maybe in the presentation of the results? So this kind of, when you start kind of looking into this, and this is kind of what the Europeans are trying to do, is they are kind of like a codifying and creating this regulatory description of artificial intelligence, limiting certain, possible outcomes, right? So at the end of the day, right? So who is at fault? Is there a fault at all in there? And and if it is, then it's going to be called probably bias, right? But it could be manifesting
Hmm.
itself in a number of different ways.
Well, that unpacks a lot because I actually have my very first topic, or maybe I'll even
Mm,
title this, is that I always think there's something innately human, and this is where bias is inherent in us, right? I
mm,
don't think you can be human without bias because, in fact, we operate on bias, right? Which is
mm, mm,
back to being lazy. We don't want to do much more than is necessary, as does most natural things. And so therefore, we're just going to make decisions based on nothing,
mm,
pretty much. Computers, however, that's the problem is we assume that they've got better intentions or better programming or something like that. And I just put as the title here is we always want somebody to blame, and that's somebody, right? We love to blame other people. In fact, I think most organizations, if we could all if we could all recall our working relationships, it's sometimes always about blame.
Yeah. So in that respect, right? Let's say if we are talking about the bias and kind of blame there, right? It's a very difficult thing to actually pinpoint, right? Like
Totally.
if let's say um, within an organization, right? You are supposed to do something, but for some reason you are not doing it, right? What would be the reasons for it, right? Like, are you maybe your bias as a person, or a company man, right, is to kind of work with data and you don't have it, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
you have data that is giving you producing outcomes that people don't like, right? Your boss don't like the conclusions that you're providing, right?
Mhm.
All this is kind of like, kind of getting more and more relevant to a situation where you have artificial intelligence that can kind of retrieve data for you, write code for you, kind of like monitor if you are efficient, right? Kind of create some sort of a rubric for your behavior, organizational behavior, and kind of score you. But at the end of the day, you really maybe don't know what to do, right? So you were not biased, but you kind of didn't have the marching orders, you didn't have the vision, you didn't know kind of what to do, right? So this kind of turns into a discussion, and we always kind of talk about these topics, in the enterprise framework, because that's kind of where the most power is concentrated and the jobs are there, and it's always powerful organizations have this kind of, I mean, there is a lot of things that you need a big organizations to actually do, right? I mean, if you want to produce a car, you have to have a powerful organization. It has to be an enterprise kind of like structure, right? So
Mhm.
this kind of turns into, if you want to kind of stay with bias, for a little bit longer, then we can continue unpacking, and how it's kind of like going into organizational behavior, how it's going in the leadership problems, how it's going into result presentations, or kind of like all the jobs from the C-suite to the actual kind of like people who do manual work, right? So yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah.
I think you're onto something. I mean, this is really okay. So we want someone to blame. We do not like
Mhm.
blaming computers, although that is a
Mhm.
pastime of many, right? You just
Mhm.
had problems with your microphone, which is what all people think of when they think of computers, right? That when they
Mhm.
malfunction, it's the computer's fault. There's got to be a Dilbert, isn't that a whole world of Dilbert cartoons or something that computers themselves are flawed in some ways, but they really
Mhm.
aren't. They're just tools like any other tool. AI being in positioned, I'd say positioned as being able to make decisions, which is my other. There's there's a lot of subtopics, right? So that we always want some person to blame. So it seems that most organizations will always be built around somebody, even if that person's job or person's productivity or person whatever their output is completely them using AI to do all of it, right? Like, so let's just say nobody particularly cares about the processor and whatever in your computer, Jack. They just care about your output, right? They don't care like that you're on a Windows 98 machine. I know we're going to get you a new computer, Jack, one of these days. That
Yeah.
you know,
Windows 2000.
Windows 2000, I like XP, but you know what I mean. It's just this thing of we don't think of the computer other than a tool, except when it affects productivity. And then we want to blame either the computer or you, right?
Mhm.
You are faulty because, and this is my thing. Let's see if I can weave this in. Decisions being made where blame is fun, right? But decisions are not. I don't think they're being actually made by AI yet. We're still. I think we're still not. We haven't figured that out. But what we want to do as humans, as far as I know, more than anything else, Maybe you can tell where I'm going with this. What do we want all these things to do for us, Jack?
Well, I mean, there's probably a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in an organizational behavior in the context of generative AI, right? So
Yeah, okay. Okay.
here's a
Hierarchy,
here's a
nice.
paper, here's a paper, right, for us to write, right? So my hierarchy of needs is that that I know that there is an expectation now that there is AI that I'm supposed to be using really well. And so there is a expectation now that my productivity should be through the roof. So
Ooh,
that,
now
so
you've hit
that,
it, right? So
yeah,
it's a tool usage problem again on your XP machine that you will
mm,
somehow become much more productive because we gave you
yeah,
access to Llama or something, right? Or
yeah, exactly,
O3 or
yeah,
whatever, right?
yeah. So I'm
Um,
writing a code, right? If I'm writing the code, I no longer have an excuse that, oh, I'm running into some bugs, so I'm going to need a little bit more time, right? I don't have that excuse anymore because the copilots and everything else is supposed to do that for me, right? Now, if,
oh boy.
if, if I'm designing a system, I'm writing some sort of a specification, I no longer have the excuse of, hey, I need a little bit more time to write it up or do the slides, because there's supposed to be already tools that will do that for me, right? I'm just kind of prompting
Yeah.
it, and yeah. So if let's say there is some sort of information sharing kind of situation also, I no longer have the excuse, because there is actually AI that you can use within Teams that will start communicating or picking, like I can have this automation kind of in Teams, with a copilot that is going to inform everybody that is relevant about what I'm doing. And so you can see at any level, basically, that there is an expectation now that there is this turbocharging, maybe not finally making all the work, but the turbocharger kind of there with the AI that can help, that can alleviate, remove all the roadblocks and stuff like that.
Well, I think your answer is really good. I was teeing up my own particular very short answer, which is I believe we want these things to predict the future. So I think that's this, maybe it's not in the hierarchy of needs, but let's just say maybe it's a risk thing, which is also very relevant, happen to be today, right? Like that risk, uh, the risk of hiring you, Jack, is that
Mm.
we're going to be out some money, and therefore productivity and or output, like you just said, is sort of expected in some ways. It's probably
Mm.
never actually communicated to you, which is a beef I have, is why I actually want AI to take over management, because if it cannot articulate what it is that you're supposed to do, right, how is it supposed to be this assistant? Unless, of course, it's just basic. Like with me, it's a lot of grammar mistakes. I mean, I kind of rely on it now because I don't know grammar as well as I thought I did. So
Mm.
so I'm fairly happy, but I'm also happy with it telling me how to get to the store. You see what I mean?
Mm.
These are just
Mm.
nudges, which, by the way, fascinating topic, and a whole book about nudging people, right? Like we're supposed to be decision makers, of which we dislike making decisions as a whole, humans do, but we have to do it anyway. You have to decide when to go to bed and when to get up, and your New Year's goal is to be better at that decision, right?
Mm.
Or be more I don't know how you would measure this other than that you had some change, the prediction of the future, that your future will be brighter and more filled with fun if you could go to bed early and wake up early or something. Is that, I hate to use you as an example, Jack, but it is
Mm.
interesting, right? That this construct is so human, yet we're kind of pushing, I think, these decisions. I'm looking at I was kind of reading through that. I think you even mentioned it in this paper that Amazon is now using AI to screen all of its applicants. I think that makes
Yeah.
sense, but I kept thinking, well, who's going to make the decision? Because the decision still has to be a person so that you can blame them, right? Your
Mm.
work still has to be done by you so that I can blame you if I don't like it. And it's interesting that maybe that is the future of employment, is just to be the person to be yelled at when things go wrong with the AI system. Although that seems like I'm making a joke, but I don't know. Maybe I'm not. Because we don't like, blaming computers seems fruitless, right? Blaming O3 or whatever OpenAI's new model, it says that, okay, I can do better than most experts, right? That's kind of people's fear. And our discussions about this, I'm like, I don't know what you need an expert for anyway. You still have to make a decision. That decision is still up to future prediction. Hey, this is a good decision or a bad decision, right? That's a future predictor. Who knows? I think the whole derivatives market is based on not knowing anything, right? It's just there to say, you don't have to know. You can just bet one side or the other, right? Or you can come up with fancy math models to say that, well, no matter what happens, you'll come out okay. And yeah, I think I've branched off into 4 or 5 subjects there, but we started with bias. I'm just saying, I think the bias is still about perception of what we do or our value, and whether or not we're using a tool or not, it's still going to fall upon people, right? People are still the decision makers. I still decide to follow the rules of whatever Google tells me to do to get to my destination, right? And I can change. I can alter that. But I don't sit there and blame the computer. I just say, well, I have the ability to follow this or not following it, right?
Yeah, but that is changing, right? I mean, to use your example of going from point A to point B, pretty soon you will have autonomous driving, and you will make a decision that you go autonomously or you're driving yourself. So if there is a collision, fender bender or something, right? Who is going to be at fault? Is it going to be you who made the decision that I'm going autonomously, and then that program maybe malfunctioned, right? Or simply was incapable? Maybe it was not malfunctioning, it was just a situation that it couldn't interpret correctly. So here is a collision, right? So who is at fault, right? And then, if that situation can be transferred into other areas of life, right? Where you have some sort of an autonomous system that is going to maybe help you at work with something, give you a direction, which is already happening, right? Like if I'm writing code with AI, it's giving me a direction, which kind of libraries to use, which kind of algorithmic approaches should I apply, and there might be a consequence to it, right? Maybe there is going to be another team, right? And
I assume it could also just be garbage, a hack, right? Like it doesn't have to be good.
Yeah,
and I read that today. Like I don't know if it's good or bad. I just know if it works or not, which is the same as your boss. Hey, I don't know what Jack does, but this output is terrible, right? Like, hey, shape up and work harder or whatever is what bosses do, right? Yeah. But that's what's so bad about it, right? I mean, I don't think that I keep thinking that there's got to be, and I think you bring up a good one about driving, because the answer is always somebody, right? Like that's what's interesting. I don't think that we could say, wow, it's just a bunch of bad luck. That's the predicting the future part. The predicting of the future part is that this is the best thing ever to have driverless cars, which I think actually is outstandingly incorrect, since the best thing is not having any cars at all. But you see what I mean? It's solving a problem in a weird way, and then asking us to say, no, we can't hold software to blame. It's got to be a person to blame.
Yeah, and maybe that is changing, right? I mean,
okay, so you're on the side that we will somehow accept that? I don't know. I just don't think we ever could.
Yeah, I'm already reading things about the artificial general intelligence, right? Where maybe the O3 model is already there, right? Like it's apparently it's apparently outperforming all the doctors, apparently
Sure.
outperforming all the lawyers, all the masters and everything, right? So if that's kind of like the progression, right? Like every year we're gonna get something that is that radical of a jump, then artificial general intelligence is really kind of within grasp within a year or two. So that means that the boss is maybe still going to be a human person, but there is going to be really kind of like such a heavy bias, right, of that person in charge to actually look at the recommendation from the AI, that it's really going to be basically kind of just this kind of like a human who is going to be an interface between the computer and the organization. And that's not going to be a very important interface. It's going to be like a secondary interface just to kind of rubber stamp whatever comes from the super intelligent system that has access to all the ERP data. It has access to all the, human resources information. It has access to whatever it needs to kind of shape the teams, allocate resources, subdivide the problems into projects, manage the projects within the Jira environment, which will be AI driven anyway, very, very quickly. Right. So if you look at all the islands, and the AGI kind of on the horizon, then yeah, maybe there needs to be a CEO that is going to run the meeting, right? Say, hey guys, we have a great organization and here's an agenda coming from the AI. Here's the projects coming from the AI. Here's our investment coming from the AI. So yeah, I mean, yeah. So in that respect, bias kind of takes into a different meaning, right? So I started this meeting with a bias defined as a machine learning term, where models go in a certain way, but now it's going to be a human bias that is kind of going into a certain way because of the
Jack?
Okay, I'm back. I think my screen froze.
You were in the middle of a good one, Jack. Yes. So we have a couple of, you said a couple things and continue because you were talking about bias, right? And we just said, now this is another really interesting operative word. I'm still stuck, by the way, and you can tell me that I'm wrong. I'm still stuck on this idea that any decision being made is a future predictor, right? That to me is just inherent. I'm making this decision due to its predominance of it having good outcomes. And you're right. If you've got the smartest people on earth, they can recommend whatever. But I will tell you, speaking of your doctor thing, I'm about to go see the doctor, and I get, when you go to the doctor, you get a certain readout now. You get to see some data. It's kind of cool. Like you get to see your blood or something like that. And it has into it, normative, whatever, the normal distribution curve, right? And it can say you're on whatever spectrum of the curve. Like it doesn't need a doctor to tell you. And I'm always interested because the readout says terrible things, which makes me anxious, right? When I talk to my doctor, they just ignore that. And somewhat deliberately too. They're just, yeah, whatever, don't worry about it. So the bias, the bias is still, I don't know. Anyway, you had a better point than I did on that, but I can blame the doctor, which is kind of why we hire doctors, I think, is order to blame them for our own lack of doing what they intend us to do and doing it properly, which I think is pretty much the case, right? Like, hey, eat healthier and go to bed early, Jack, and right, and you just don't do it.
Yeah. So yeah. So I think the economy, the sciences around the economy are even worse than that, right? Because I think it would be a pretty uniform thing to say, hey, if you sleep better, and exercise a little bit, then you will feel better. But in the economy, right, you can have a completely opposite points of views and still those models exist, right? I mean,
Yeah.
some economic theorists will tell you, oh, saving is great, and the other
Hmm.
ones will tell you, oh, no, going to debt actually is great, right? So
Hmm.
totally opposite views. So reconciling those probably would kind of take a very strong AI to actually, and very difficult to kind of, without a bias, kind of, we all have inherent bias, right? And so it would be really difficult to build an AI system that would reconcile those differences, and it would be a very easy task to build an AI system that would be biased toward a certain side, right? So yeah, so this is
Yeah.
kind of like, this is a hard one.
Well, it's why I took notes, Jack, because yes, it
Mm,
comes to all these fun ideas from Kahneman and stuff about framing, right? The framing of good versus bad, right, is very
mm,
human. It doesn't really suit a rational, smartest person in the world model, right? But
mm,
smartest person in the world models at the moment, I'm assume dig up facts and tell you to do something. They still don't act. And being smart to me is not always about action, unless, except historically, when it's been action like we should definitely invade that country or something, right? Like that seems like
mm,
the highest level decisions you'd make based on some sort of information. And as far as I
mm,
know, every time we've done that, it's been pretty crappy, right? It's never been
mm,
the greatest of decisions. It's always made under a mistaken frame, right? Or
mm,
under duress or bias. I guess we can continue to wrap up that this word is pretty important, maybe,
mm,
in our moving forward with AI, because it's going to have the bias of action. Hey, I'm not going to sweat the
mm,
directions from Google Maps. Right. I assume it's biased, and now I think it's actually programmed in that it gives you many choices because it just doesn't pick one anymore. It just says, "Hey, there's 5 routes to go." So your CEO is going to get this report from AI that says, "Well, you can do a whole bunch of stuff,"
mm,
which is what I would do if I was a human giving him my research, right? It's like I can't say that there is one definite course of action, or else we would be able to predict the future, which we cannot, right? The prediction of the future is the bias that humans have, that our
mm,
decisions are going to be beneficial. But yet, wrapping this up, get to
mm.
bed early,
Yeah.
wake up early. See, I know this is going to be beneficial, right?
Yeah, and don't smoke too many of those favorite cigars that you have stashed
Not too
somewhere.
many cigars. No, no, no. All right. Well, good stuff as always, Jack. I can't wait to write this up because I think we've got some key elements with some rambling, but still, I like this
Yeah.
bias idea. It's interesting, um, because certainly it goes against. Well, it goes pro the idea of the smartest person in the room, right? The smartest person in the room tends to be the least decisive if you're thinking of me and you, right?
Yeah. Well, there was a documentary on the fall of Enron, right? And I think the title of that documentary is "The Smartest Man in the Room." And yeah, it might sometimes it might appear, right, like the that that particular person is the smartest one in the room, but you see the side effect on after so many years, right? So yeah, so the bias, the bias problem that we are trying to tackle is really, I think, only beginning, right? I mean,
Hmm.
just
Oh,
imagine what's going.
oh, it's huge. No, no, I think we should run on this one.
Yeah,
This
just
is
just
this is
imagine
good.
just imagine when generative AI will get the kind of like the vibe that it knows everything. just imagine what's going to happen, maybe in a few years when people will start kind of talking about it when, well, this just AI is godlike. What's going to happen if that is the perception that's going to get developed? Because it's going to be it's not going to be very easy. I mean, it's not going to be very easy to avoid, like that's kind of a situation where, it's already trained on a lot of religious patterns. It's already trained on a lot of stuff that is philosophical. And suddenly you will have all that stuff kind of talking back at you, through your phone or through the websites, through the avatars, through games, through news that will be AI generated, right? That maybe can answer in real time your own question, right? It's going to be difficult to avoid this kind of like a godlike characteristic. And what's going to happen then?
The
right?
Oracle. We're gonna
Yeah.
talk the Matrix in the next one, right? It's the
Exactly. Yeah.
But hey, still back to predicting the future. Don't forget,
Yeah.
it's this thing that we have that we think is important. Well, either way, can't wait for the next discussion. Cheers. Have a lovely weekend, Jack.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Same to you.
And scene.
Cut.